As is so often the case, this has been prompted by a discussion with someone about the cost effectiveness of turnkey route compared with self-managed route. So I want to try and clarify why turnkey is such a cost-effective way of delivering a project. If you're going to go about a self-build project, there are the services of a number of professionals that you're going to need, regardless of what route you go down. So for example, you're going to need an architectural designer, an architectural designer to design your house, unless of course you are an architect. You're going to need somebody to look after costs for you. Normally that would be a QS, a quantity surveyor, or some sort of cost consultant. You're going to need a number of surveys for your site. Typically that might be an arboricultural survey, a topographical survey, an ecological survey. All of these, well, they're not all needed for every site, but some are needed to support most planning applications. You're going to also need the input from a number of professionals like an engineer and a SAP consultant. So an engineer is needed to do the engineering calculations for the house to prove it for building control. A SAP consultant is needed to do the calculations on the energy performance of the house to satisfy building control. So you're going to need the input from all of those different professionals. We'll come on to construction in a minute. Now, whether you appoint those professionals yourself or not, you're going to need their input. So what happens with a turnkey route from our perspective is we do quite a bit of that work ourselves. So we have our own architectural design team, architects and architectural technicians. We have our own in-house cost consultant, and we appoint third parties where we need them. So we appoint third-party engineers and surveyors where we need them. Now, we get very good rates from those professionals because we use them so frequently. So I think it's pretty safe to say that appointing those professionals and doing that work in-house gives us a very efficient, cost-efficient way of delivering everything needed during the design part of the process, the cost and budgeting part of the process, and the value engineering part of the process, and far better value than one would typically get if you went to try and appoint all those people individually. Moreover, because we've got them all here, we have quite an efficient process. And for example, with the cost consultancy, our design team can refer to our cost consultant at any time. We have some quite formal stages when the cost consultant gets involved. That's pre-planning, for example, to make sure that what we're going in to get planning permission for has every chance of falling within the client's budget, because that's a common problem where people get planning permission, often unknowingly getting planning permission for things they then cannot afford to build. That's unknowing that they won't be able to afford to build it, not unknowing they're going for planning permission. So that part of the process can be very efficient, keeping it all under one roof and the risk in one place. Because we appoint all the necessary professionals, our client only has a contract with us. They don't have multiple contracts with the architect, with the quantity surveyor, with the various surveyors, ecological, topographical, and so on, with the engineer, with the SAP consultant. So they have one contract with us, minimising their risk and making us responsible for the performance of all those individuals. So that in itself is a very efficient part of the process. Then you move on to the construction part. Now, we work with main contractors, so they tend to be a medium-sized company, medium-sized builder, and we work with main contractors who are local to each of our projects. So we have projects as far afield as Kent, Cheshire and Cornwall. So we work with local main contractors. Now your alternative, if you don't work with a main contractor, is to work with a number of subcontractors. So if you're going to self-manage a project, you're going to need to appoint a ground worker, a bricklayer, a plumber, an electrician, and so on. So again, you end up with multiple contracts. Will you get the best price? That's quite unlikely because a subcontractor contracting to a main contractor where he needs subcontractors will almost certainly give that main contractor a better price than he will give a member of the public, because he knows when he goes to site to do his piece of work, the site will be ready, he can do it efficiently. Working on a self-build project, he will fully expect the site not to be entirely ready, to go back more often than he might have to with a main contractor contract. So you'll have to appoint a number of subcontractors. You're unlikely to get the best price. You're going to have risk in lots of different places because you have lots of different contracts. And by risk, I mean if something were to go wrong with the building later on in its life, you're not going to know who to turn to get it fixed. So you have much greater risk. You're unlikely to get as good a price. Now, people will say, but aren't I paying the main contractor to look after my project? The answer is yes. The main contractor will take the cost of all his materials, the cost of all his labour, and he'll put his overheads and profits onto it. However, I can pretty much guarantee that when you take the buying power of a main contractor and add on his overheads and profits, you're going to be paying materially less than if you went out and tried to negotiate all of those individual packages of work yourself. So even with their overheads and profits, our experience is you're going to be getting a better price. Now, as part of the turnkey route, we also go through a process of negotiation with the main contractor on behalf of our clients to make sure that we're getting a fair market price from the main contractor for the project. We know what that price should look like because we have typically between 25 and 30 active projects at any one time. So we're continually seeing prices come in from the market. So we know what a fair market price looks like. So we go through all that process of negotiation for our clients. They haven't got to negotiate with lots of individual subcontractors and into lots of separate contracts. They simply have a contract with us for all the design work, all the professional services, and then they enter into a contract which we write up between themselves and the main contractor, with us acting as their contract administrator to make sure the contract is delivered by the main contractor to the agreed price. So, in summary, the turnkey service should be a much more cost-efficient route with far less risk, far fewer contracts.